Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Black Thought, and I'm your host, Dr. Hutchinson. Good to have you on this great day. I am blessed that each and every day you decide to watch this show. We're 150,000 strong, probably close to 160,000 now. We have people watching us from all over the place. We have people watching from England. We have people watching all over the country, Australia. I want to thank you for watching this show. And every time I go around Memphis, when I go to the dry cleaners, when I go to the supermarket, wherever I go, I run into somebody who has said they watch this show. Want to also thank all of my Facebook friends, especially for this show. I know that you've been spreading it far and wide to tune in today, and I pray that at the end of our conversation on this show that you will be blessed, because I look forward to being blessed. Let me do a few housekeeping things before we go to our guest. There are 3 ways to contact me and to share with us on this show. First of all, you can go to our Facebook page, MUTV1 Black Thought. You see it there at the bottom of the screen, MUTV1 Black Thought. Go there. You will see links to some of the things that we have discussed. For example, yesterday we had Pastor Thomas from the Innovation Church. They are starting their first inaugural service this coming Sunday. We have a link to his website on the Facebook page already, and through there you can also find links to his Facebook page. And so we have that on the site. We have information also on the site concerning some of the topics that we've discussed, and we have the background information so you can seek it for yourself, even with our series Blacks in the Bible, and we will be continuing that next week. You will see that there are links to some of the places where we got the information. I have shared with several of you, and I'm sure that the person that's with me would agree. Dr. Kane Hope Felder is a great resource for getting information on blacks in the Bible. So we shared the link with the article that he listed, and we also shared with you on this show, Troubling Biblical Waters and Stony the Road We Trod. 2 excellent books that discuss blacks in the Bible. So you can find all of that information if you go to our Facebook page, MUTV1 Black Thought. Also, you can reach out to me through email, blackthought.mutv1@yahoo.com. Don't know why someone wants to call. Oh, that's one of my friends. Let's see. Friend, how you doing? Speak your piece. All right, you said enough. Let me go back to what I was saying. You can get to me by email, blackthought.mutv1@yahoo.com. Black Thought, we've taken the name of the show, condensed it into one word, at MUTV1. That's the television station, at yahoo.com. You can reach me that way. And of course, I am the proud pastor of First Baptist Church Lauderdale in that great hamlet of South Memphis. And so if you want to reach out to me that way, the number there is 523-0501, 523-0501. But of course, I'm on the air now, so if you call there, I won't be there. Watch me here, and I'm glad you're here with us. Let me welcome our guest, and we are so blessed. The Memphis community was blessed for the past 12 years. I think it's 13 years. And we are blessed to have him back in Memphis today. And that is none other than Dr. Frank Anthony Thomas, the retired senior servant of the Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. Good to have you here today, my brother.
Thank you, my brother, for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you, thank you. Now, I'll get into why he's here in Memphis toward the end of the show, but really, I want to have dialogue with him about something that is really earth-shattering. He's modest about it, but this is something that is unique in the history of the church, especially in the history of the African American church. Let me read some scripture to kind of frame what we're about to do. When you go to 2 Timothy chapter 4, and you start at the first verse and end with the fifth verse, it says this in the New International Version. It says, in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who will judge the living and the dead, and in view of his appearing in his kingdom, I give you this charge. Preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when men will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But now I want you to anchor in this fifth verse. The first four set the context. The fifth verse says, but you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. If we were to read this in the King James Version of the Bible, it would say, make proof of your ministry. And so, to set the context today of where we're going, I want to highlight to you, and you can see this, the most recent book by Dr. Thomas, which is entitled The Choice. This book chronicles, let me read what it says in the back of the book. That's even better. It says, Thomas describes the spiritual and coaching process by which he came to announce his retirement as the senior pastor of Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church after serving in pastoral ministry for 31 years. So I was having dialogue with him before the show, and what he has done is unique in the annals of the church because he is still in his prime. He's still a young man. He's a little older than me, so he's a young man. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
And he has retired from pastoral ministry in his prime, and I mentioned to him that there's only one other major pastor that I know of, or pastor period, that I know of that was able to do that. His name was Elliot Mason, and he was pastoring in Los Angeles, California, and he left the pastorate to engage in a prayer and evangelistic ministry, and he was successful at it for many years. And so Dr. Thomas has chronicled his journey, which is something unique and rare in the church, and it's very insightful. And so this book is out. And again, I'm going to tell you where you can get the book. I'll give you a hint. If you come to First Baptist Lauderdale tonight, you can get the book. But I digress. Let me yield now and go to Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas, I want to really start even before the book. Talk to us about your journey. How did you start in ministry? You know, what was some of the impetus to get you started on your journey in a particular way? For example, you have 3 doctorates. You have extensive learning. You have, if I counted correctly, you have either 5 or 6 degrees. There's something that drives that. So talk about your spiritual and your pastoral formation for us real quick.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me, and this is a wonderful program. It's very enlightening. And in this age, when my argument is not many people are doing much thinking as they watch the media and television, it's refreshing to be on this program where thought is important.
Thank you.
And thinking things through. So I commend you on your program.
Thank you.
I pray with you that it just expands and expands and expands, and that you have a national broadcast.
Oh my goodness! Thank you.
Well, that's the first thing. Secondly, I think for me, I just have always had a desire to learn and to know. And, you know, there's so much of our history, for example, that if you're ignorant of, you are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. And so I don't know quite, maybe it was from my grandfather. My grandfather gave my mother a subscription to Reader's Digest as a Christmas present.
Oh.
And so my mother used to read, and that was expressive of my grandfather's desire. He never went to college. My mother was the first college graduate in the family. And so I think I picked up that desire to know and to read and to learn. And so the degrees simply represent a desire to know and understand the world around me, and then to interpret that world through Christ to make the world a better place. So, you know, people are impressed with the degrees, and that's okay and that's fine, but it's really about understanding the world, understanding the gospel, making, you know, the mix between the world and the gospel, and my desire to serve and make the world a better place.
That's fantastic. Now, in saying that, you have also had a far-reaching ministry.
Thank you.
I'll say this for you. You have had a fantastic preaching ministry. You've had a fantastic pastoral ministry. You've had a fantastic teaching ministry. Let's kind of talk about the teaching ministry first, as we have engaged this conversation about you and learning. What made you get into the teaching ministry? And just talk about that for a bit. Do you see it as an extension of your desire to learn?
Yeah.
Kind of open that up for us.
I think, one of the best secrets is the person who learns the most in the class is the teacher. We think that the students learn the most, but as a teacher, you have to research your facts. You have to know what you're talking about. Also, you find many students, not all, but many students are engaging. They provide seed work. They ask a question you hadn't quite thought about. So I'm always in a learning mode. My wife, it says I'm a lifelong learner. And so teaching is one way that I learn, because as you put the information out, and if you listen, it's going to come back. And in the dialogue, I learn more, the students learn more, and I'm just blessed. So I love to teach.
Okay. But now let's expand that, because in your formation, it's interesting, and this ties into the book, and we'll get to it.
Okay.
You engaged in teaching.
Right.
You went and got your training so that you could perfect your gift of preaching.
Right.
And you got into pastoral ministry. Let's talk about who helped to shape your concept of preaching, and where did all of that come from? Because your preaching has depth that a lot of preachers don't have.
Right.
And that comes from somewhere. Some people will say old school, open your mouth and the Lord will speak for you.
Right.
But we know that unless you put something in your head and have conversation with the Lord on your knees, when you open your mouth, won't be anything but air. So we know that, but kind of open that conversation up for us.
Well, I really was a quiet kind of person, nerdy, do a lot of reading, study. In high school, I got 9 letters, so I was sports minded. I wasn't just totally a nerd, but I did also edit the sports section of the school newspaper. So I always had that nerdy side, to me. And so when I went into ministry and I started preaching like a nerd, I'm doing research and I'm writing. And so I really was kind of nervous about it. And I was in Chicago, and Chicago is famous for hooping, and I wasn't I wasn't a hooper, at all. And so I began to hear a stream of preachers started by D.E. King, who were non-hooping preachers, but who were powerful. And I said, it's okay if you hoop, that's a wonderful thing, but you can also non-hoop and be powerful. I mean, D.E. King would light a room up. With his stories, with his insight. And I said, I want to be like that. Then I heard, Frederick G. Sampson out of Detroit at the time. And he was quoting Shakespeare in his sermons. So I said, so you really can marry intellect and, depth, the Bible and truth. And then Jeremiah Wright was a tremendous influence about keeping it real, bringing it, so even though you're intellectual, you have to bring it to the ground so common people, because probably my preaching mentors would be Jeremiah Wright, Frederick G. Sampson, D.E. King, and people who integrate both the head and the heart.
Those are some formidable names. And what a lot of people don't know or may not know is Dr. Wright is a formidable scholar. Yes, right. Formidable.
Right, yes. Very much so. He combines, when you don't listen to the sound bites, you actually listen to his ministry.
That's right.
Right, you'll discover that, right? But I used to go to church there every Sunday, so I knew the scholarship. I knew the reading he was doing, and that appealed to my intellectual side, but also the soul stirring, the heart, the depth, the black preacher, the celebration, all of that stuff in one person. And I said that this is a model that I would like to perfect. You don't have to be unintellectual. And I don't know why we have an anti-intellectual bias in the black church. And, so we'll call the seminary the cemetery. And it's crazy because we're assuming that a person cannot be learned but yet deeply believing. And those can go in the same person, and that's what I've tried. I've tried to be a learned preacher, but believe that Bible and marry it together and put the word out to people.
And I'm sure that he was a mentor, or I shouldn't say was, because he's still in the land of the living, and I talk to him periodically, but I know he was probably a mentor to you as well, Dr. Gardner C. Taylor.
Yeah, the dean.
Formidable mind,
Yeah.
formidable intellect,
Right.
on his way to law school, but then when that accident happened back in rural Louisiana, the Lord routed his course another way, involved heavily in the civil rights movement. So intellect can marry with practicality,
Right.
and give you an awesome gospel and also impact your ministry.
Well,
So,
you know,
go right ahead.
Dr. King is a classic example, and Martin Luther King Jr. is a classic example of that. You know,
Exactly.
he's got a PhD from Boston, and yet he's pastoring a Black Baptist church. You know, so he's in the academy, he's formulating ideas, and yet, you know, his father didn't get the level of academics. So he had the best of the academic side, and he had the best of folk preaching.
Exactly.
And that's why his message was so heard by everybody in this country. So it is possible to marry the intellect and to marry the heart and put it together and articulate a message that's powerful.
That's great. Let me take us now to the pastoral ministry,
Okay.
and then we'll go into the book, and then we'll take calls. Pastoral ministry. How did you get into pastoral ministry? And just kind of give us some snapshots of the two places where you pastored.
It really was quite by accident that I got, well, I guess you say divine accident. I was on my way to do a PhD program at North Carolina. I was going to study the history of religions. And I was in a class and I wrote a paper on Amos 5:24, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. So the professor called me to the back and to his office and said, well, what are you going to do with your life? This is in the book, by the way. What are you going to do with your ministry? I said, well, I'm on my way to do a PhD program. And he said, you have gifts of pastoring. The sensitivity with which you treated this text, you have gifts to pastor people. We have enough teachers. What the people need are shepherds. So that opened my mind up to pastor, because I was totally closed to pastoring based upon some of the treatment I had seen at the hands of some church members to a pastor that I cared deeply about, right? I said, oh, no, that's not for me. No way. Church people are crazy. That is not for me, right? I'm just going to teach my little stuff. I'll be a scholar. So when he said that to me, that opened up and a small congregation in the south suburbs of Chicago, a place called New Faith Baptist Church. The congregation had just split. They were down to 57 people. And my mother happened to be a member of the church, and they didn't have anybody to preach on Mother's Day. So, because they knew that my mother had a son in seminary, they said, why don't we have your son come out? So I came out and preached, and they invited me back the next Sunday to preach, and I'll make it quick. And then they invited me to be the interim. The church started growing while I was the interim. They said, it's growing while you're the interim. Why won't it grow if you're the pastor? We're going to make you the pastor. So I thought God was in that. So for 18 years, I pastored Mississippi Boulevard. I pastored New Faith Baptist Church, and the Lord blessed us with tremendous growth, 4,000 people, 27 acres of land, building, blah, 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 all of that. This is in the book as well. And the second opportunity, pastoral opportunity, was to pastor Mississippi Boulevard. And, you know, many of your listeners will know the great history and tradition, Alvin Jackson, Mississippi Boulevard, I mean, Maceo Walker, you know, Blair T. Hunt, you know, it's a great and a fabulous. So I was there for 13 years. I served as a pastor of that congregation, had a wonderful opportunity to grow, and I had never lived outside of my home, which was in Chicago and Illinois, and so I really grew tremendously, and I just have a ton of love and respect for the people of Mississippi Boulevard, gratitude and gratefulness for the opportunity, because I just grew tremendously in the last 13 years here in Memphis.
Well, that's a blessing, and what we're going to do now, viewers, is this. When we come back, we're going to talk directly about some of the things that are in the book, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to call in. Let me give you the number now. The number now to call in is 527-2414, 527-2414. We're going to take calls after we go to break. I want to thank Dr. Thomas again for being with us. You are watching Black Thought, and I'm your host, Dr. Hutchinson.